Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. We love taking a topic and really digging in. And today we're going to be talking all about hypnosis, but not just the swinging pocket watch kind of hypnosis. We're going way beyond that today.
Yeah, we're going to try to separate, what's real and what's not, what's fiction. And we're going to be using the Wikipedia article on hypnosis. It's got a lot of great info on, what hypnosis is, how it works, and how it's used. And, it's used in a lot more than you might think, like therapy or even the military.
Okay, so let's unpack this. What exactly is hypnosis? We've all heard the word, but what's actually happening?
So basically it involves this focused attention, and you become less aware of what's around you. And in that state, you're more open to suggestion. It's interesting, though, because a lot of people compare it to sleep. But it's really a very different state of mind.
So it's not like you're unconscious or asleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like when you get super focused on something, like when you're reading a book or watching a movie, and you kind of forget about everything else around you.
Yeah, exactly. But here's where things get kind of tricky. There are actually two main theories about how it all works. Some researchers think that hypnosis actually puts you in a completely different state of consciousness. We call those the altered state theories.
Oh, so something in your brain changes.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're in a totally different mental state.
Yeah, exactly. But then there are the non-state theories, folks, and they think it's more about the power of suggestion and expectations and even maybe a little bit of role-playing, but all happening within your normal awareness.
So it's like your mind is responding to these really powerful suggestions.
You got it. And the thing is, even scientists aren't 100% sure which one is right. But the important thing is, no matter how it works, suggestion is powerful. We're all influenced by suggestions all the time. Think about advertising,
Right.
or peer pressure, or even just how a friend can convince you to try something new.
That's so true. We're constantly being hit with suggestions all day long.
Exactly. So just realizing how suggestible we are can be really eye-opening.
Now, this is where it gets even more interesting. Because hypnosis can be used for a lot of different things, not just, the stereotypical stage show. There's hypnotherapy. They use that to help people with anxiety, pain management, even things like IBS or menopause symptoms.
And there's actually growing evidence that it can be pretty effective. Did you know that the North American Menopause Society, they actually recommend hypnotherapy for managing hot flashes?
Wow. That's pretty remarkable. And then there's forensic hypnosis. They use that sometimes in investigations to try and, enhance memory recall.
Mm-hmm.
But there's obviously a lot of controversy around that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are big concerns about, maybe creating false memories under hypnosis. So it has to be used very carefully.
Then there's even military hypnosis. Apparently the CIA looked into using it, which even led to that whole MKUltra project. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's definitely a fascinating area of research, especially from the Cold War era.
Okay, but let's get back to some less cloak and dagger uses. There's also self-hypnosis, which is something you can actually learn to do yourself.
Totally. There are techniques that can help with things like boosting your motivation or managing stress, or even breaking habits like smoking. It's all about learning to tap into your own mind to make positive changes.
And of course, there's always stage hypnosis, which is really more about entertainment.
Right. It's important to remember that it's really about audience participation and, having fun. The hypnotist isn't actually controlling anyone's mind. They're just guiding them through these suggestions. And the people on stage are choosing to go along with it.
So it's more like they're playing along.
Exactly. It's like improv, but with a hypnotic twist. The key is that people are willing to play the game.
Okay, so we've talked about what hypnosis is and some of the ways it can be used. But let's get into how suggestion actually works.
All right. So one of the early pioneers of hypnosis, a guy named James Braid, he thought it was all about the power of a single idea, one dominant idea that takes hold in your mind. He believed that just focusing your attention on one specific thought could trigger all these physical and psychological changes.
So it's like focusing all your energy on that one thought.
Yeah. But as research went on, it became clear that it wasn't just about one single idea. Later on, researchers realized that both verbal and nonverbal suggestions played a role. Things like commands or metaphors or imagery, even the tone of voice the hypnotist uses. All of that can contribute to the experience.
So it's about creating a whole experience that makes those suggestions stronger.
Yeah, exactly. But the big question is, where do these suggestions actually land in our minds? Are they working on our conscious mind, our unconscious mind, or maybe both?
Right. Do we even understand how those two parts of our minds work together?
That's a question that has puzzled scientists for a long time. But there are some interesting theories out there, like the idea of the ideodynamic reflex. This theory says that even just thinking about something can trigger an automatic physical response.
Oh, like when you think about biting into a lemon and you start to salivate.
Exactly. Just that thought can trigger a physical response.
Okay.
Now imagine how much more powerful that could be under hypnosis.
That's wild. Our minds and bodies are way more connected than we realize. But now I have to ask the question that I'm sure everyone's thinking. Am I easily hypnotized?
Well, it's not really about being easily hypnotized. Scientists actually measure something called hypnotic susceptibility. And it turns out most people, like 80%, fall into the medium range.
So most of us are somewhere in the middle. Not super resistant, but not super suggestible either.
Right. But that other 20%, that's where it gets interesting. There's this researcher, Deirdre Barrett, she's a psychologist at Harvard, and her research suggests that there are like two types of people who are highly hypnotizable. First, you've got the fantasizers. These are people who have really vivid imaginations. They get easily absorbed in experiences. They love to daydream.
Okay, so the people who can really get lost in their own thoughts and fantasies.
Yeah.
What about the other type?
The other type are called dissociators. These are often people who have a history of trauma. And they're really good at blocking things out mentally. And this ability to kind of disconnect from their surroundings or their emotions can actually make them more susceptible to hypnosis.
Wow, that's so interesting. Two totally different personality types, but both highly hypnotizable. It makes you wonder which type you might be. Are you someone who gets lost in daydreams? Or are you better at tuning things out?
It's a fascinating question. And it shows how complex hypnosis really is. There might be different pathways to, heighten suggestibility, depending on your personality and your experiences.
That makes sense. And speaking of suggestibility, that leads us to the history of hypnosis. Like, where did all this even begin?
Well, the roots of hypnosis go back centuries, but one of the key figures was this guy, Franz Mesmer, back in the 18th century. He popularized this idea of animal magnetism. He thought it was this invisible force that could be manipulated to heal people.
Oh, yeah, Mesmer, the OG hypnotist. Wasn't he the one with all those dramatic demonstrations and those theories about magnetic fluids? But didn't his work eventually get debunked?
Well, yeah and no. I mean, his theories about animal magnetism were definitely dismissed, but his work had a lasting impact. He kind of stumbled upon the power of suggestion, even if he didn't fully understand it. And that really paved the way for our modern understanding of hypnosis.
So even though his ideas weren't quite right, he kind of accidentally helped to launch a whole new field of study.
Exactly. And then, in the 19th century, you have James Braid, this Scottish surgeon. He wanted to move away from all of Mesmer's mystical ideas and establish hypnosis on a more scientific footing. He actually coined the term hypnotism.
So Braid was the one who tried to make the study of hypnosis more scientific.
Yeah, he shifted the focus away from those mysterious magnetic forces and towards a more psychological and physiological understanding. He was really interested in things like focused attention and eye fixation and how they could induce the hypnotic state. He also emphasized the importance of verbal suggestions.
It's amazing how our understanding of hypnosis has evolved over time, from this mysterious force to something much more grounded in science. But of course, with something this powerful, there are always going to be some controversies.
Oh, definitely. In the 20th century, you had all these different schools of thought popping up, each with their own ideas about how hypnosis worked and how it could be used. And of course, there were disagreements along the way.
And one of the biggest controversies is around repressed memory recovery, right?
Yeah, the repressed memory debate is a really sensitive and complex issue. Some therapists have used hypnosis to help patients, recover memories of childhood trauma. But there are serious concerns about how accurate those memories actually are.
Because you can create false memories under hypnosis.
Exactly. Studies have shown that hypnosis can make people more confident in false memories. They might believe that something happened when it really didn't, and that can have really serious implications, especially if those memories are used in legal cases or other situations where accuracy is crucial.
That's a scary thought.
It is. It's like this delicate balance between exploring the potential of the mind and protecting people from harm.
Exactly. It seems like it's so important to work with a qualified practitioner, someone who's ethical and really understands the risks.
Absolutely. There are professional organizations out there, like the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis and the British Society of Clinical and Academic Hypnosis. They have these codes of ethics and standards of practice for professionals who use hypnosis, and these guidelines are there to make sure it's being used responsibly and ethically.
So do your research and find someone who's reputable and properly trained. Now, we've talked about the therapeutic uses of hypnosis, but you mentioned earlier that even the military has looked into it. That sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The military's interest in hypnosis actually goes way back. There are declassified documents that show that the CIA was investigating its potential for military applications. Especially during the Cold War, they were interested in things like creating super spies, who could resist interrogation, or maybe even influence enemy agents.
Wow. Did it work? Were there any successful examples of military hypnosis?
Well, the declassified documents suggest the results were mixed. They didn't find any clear evidence that hypnosis could be used reliably for things like mind control or extracting information from people.
So the Hollywood version of hypnosis,
Yeah.
where they snap their fingers and make someone spill all their secrets, that's just not real.
Right. The reality is much more complicated. But the fact that the military was putting time and money into studying it shows that they thought it had potential, even if it didn't live up to the hype.
Okay, so let's not go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. Let's talk about something a little more lighthearted. Stage hypnosis. We've all seen those shows, where people are clucking like chickens or forgetting their own names. How much of that is real?
Well, stage hypnosis is all about entertainment. It relies on a few different things, like carefully choosing participants. Stage hypnotists often pick volunteers who are already highly suggestible and who are really eager to participate.
So the stage hypnotist doesn't have some kind of magical power over the audience.
Right. It's more about creating an environment where people feel comfortable letting go and having fun. The hypnotist uses techniques like rapid inductions and direct suggestions and even physical manipulation to guide people through the experience.
But is it all real? Are people actually experiencing altered states? Or are they just playing along for the show?
That's a question that people have been debating for years. Some people think it's all about social compliance, wanting to please the hypnotist and the audience. Other people believe that there are genuine hypnotic phenomena happening, even in a stage setting.
It's like the classic question, are they faking it or are they really under the influence?
Yeah, it's probably a combination of things. The audience's expectations, the performer's charisma, the volunteer's suggestibility, the whole atmosphere, all of that contributes to what we see on stage.
So there's still a bit of mystery surrounding stage hypnosis.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, it definitely shows the power of suggestion, even when everyone knows it's just a performance.
It really does. It highlights that complex interplay between our conscious and unconscious minds. And it shows how easily our perceptions and behaviors can be influenced by things around us.
That's a great point. So after this deep dive into hypnosis, hopefully we're all seeing it in a whole new light. It's not just about swinging pocket watches and making people bark like dogs. It's a complex and fascinating phenomenon with applications in therapy, medicine, forensics, even the military.
And it's a field that still sparks a lot of debate and raises some really profound questions about the nature of consciousness, the power of suggestion, the limits of human potential. And there's still so much we don't know.
Yeah, it really makes you think. I feel like we've covered so much, but we've only scratched the surface.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about hypnosis. It's all about exploring the potential of the human mind. And, the more we learn, the more we realize how much more there is to discover.
So after all this, what would you say is like the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
Well, I think it's important to remember just how suggestible we are. Even without formal hypnosis, if our minds can be influenced this much just in our everyday lives, it makes you wonder, what does that say about how we interact with the world around us?
Yeah, that's a great point. Are we all just walking around in a kind of semi-hypnotized state, influenced by all these things like advertising, social media, the opinions of people around us?
Right. It really makes you question the whole idea of free will. How much of what we do is actually our own choice? And how much is shaped by all these external forces.
It's like that saying, you are what you believe. Maybe if we're more aware of all the suggestions we're constantly bombarded with, we can actually start to choose the beliefs that empower us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that speaks to the potential of hypnosis for personal growth. If we understand how our minds work and how we respond to suggestion, we can actually use those principles to create positive change in our lives.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
So to our listeners, if you're interested in learning more about hypnosis, I definitely encourage you to keep exploring. There are tons of resources out there, from scientific research to personal accounts to even self-hypnosis techniques you can try.
Yeah, and remember, learning is a lifelong journey. The more we delve into the mysteries of the mind, the more possibilities we open up for ourselves.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into hypnosis. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration of the power of suggestion and the incredible potential of the human mind. Until next time, stay curious